Yo guys, welcome to the video, another episode of A Chat With, and today we're lucky enough to have what's considered in the competitive community to be the best Lawbringer in the game. His name is Vinx. Vinx, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Just to start with, what kind of games did you play before For Honor, and how did you get into For Honor?
So, I used to play CSGO back in the day, but I quit almost 2 years ago, and then I wanted to get into a game that I could play on a somewhat competitive level, and I found For Honor, so I've been playing since closed betas, and I've been playing ever since, and the game got my interest.
Cool, dude. Why are you still playing For Honor? I know a lot of people left during the rocky time after launch. With various issues. Why did you stick with it? Why are you still here?
Well, first of all, there's no other game like For Honor. For Honor is unique in its own kind, and second of all, no other games just really grab my interest, so to speak, like For Honor did.
I mean, that's actually the same reason I'm still here. The game is unique, as many of us in the community know, and it's actually heavily underrated in how well it's executed.
Exactly, and if you were to look for another game that's like For Honor, you wouldn't really be successful with it either.
No, I mean, you could find some combat games that are three-dimensional, but I mean, the difference in satisfaction of gameplay is just a huge gulf. What heroes do you enjoy playing as? What other heroes do you play? Vinx, I know you ferried me as a warlord in Brawls. That was a terrible experience for me. I still struggle with it. Still haunts me. Your warlord. But who else do you play? Is it just those two, or is there more?
Well, I do play a lot of Conquer now that he's been reworked, and I do play Warlord on occasion, like you brought up, but mainly I do play three heroes, those being Lawbringer, Warlord, and Conquer. I don't really play any other
Well, you're a fan of heavy characters then.
Pretty much, yeah. I used to play Shugoki before the parry changes, but now that, you know,
But I would
after the
love to
parry
see.
changes, Shugoki's not worth playing, so I'm just waiting for him to be reworked, and once he is...
As the general consensus in the community, like I said before, is you're the #1 Lawbringer. How do you see the character right now, as he is in his current state?
In his current state, to clarify, I don't think he's very good design-wise. I think he is a playable character in team modes, primarily 4v4, but that really comes down to him having really strong feats and really strong ganking abilities, because other than that, he does not really have a lot of things going for himself. So in order to play him on a competitive level, you just need to be using the tools that are the best, which are your bombs, your impale, and your long arm on wall splats. And that's about all he has for 4v4. And as for 1v1s, for example, I think he's a very poorly designed character, because he's really boring to fight if you can't use a bash against him. It's like,
Yeah.
Conquer has a very easy time against the Lawbringer, as he can just shield bash over and over again, and Lawbringer can do nothing against that. But when you're playing a character that does not have a bash, say Aramusha for instance, then Lawbringer can be a very unfun character to fight against. He's an overly defensive character, so to speak, due to his parry punishes and his block shove being a very annoying tool.
So he doesn't seem to really have place in the game at one's level, really. It's in a very strange spot right now as a hero.
I really don't think that he fits the game anymore, because he basically discourages you to attack, something that other characters don't do to such an extent. Like, if you don't have a bash you can use, like I said, you're just going to attack a Lawbringer and he's going to block shove you over and over and over again, and I don't think that's fun for either the Lawbringer or the person that's fighting the Lawbringer.
Sure, I totally agree. You spoke a little bit about what you do in fours at a competitive level with Lawbringer right now. Can you elaborate a little bit more about that? What exactly is a Lawbringer in competitive scrims doing?
Well,
For those who are not too familiar.
he fills what I like to call a disabler role. So
Mhm.
basically, he shuts down a character, like in a group fight, right? You have
Mhm.
like a 4v4 team fight, so you're not really fighting in the set team fight locked on. What you're trying to do is use one of your best moves, which is the Impale, in order to disable one character from participating in the said team fight.
Mhm.
And as for other aspects, your goal is to be this mid lane character that is very hard to get rid of due to his bombs, his minion clear, and the fact he can punish a lot of things with Impale and his very good parry punishes.
Okay, so yeah, I mean that just sounds like more evidence towards his strange fit in the game right now, where he's indirectly in combat rather than directly.
Exactly.
He's just sitting there waiting for opportunities unlocked is not a very healthy gameplay style. Moving on from that, do you have any tips for Lawbringer players as he is now who are not at, the tournament level? Is there something all Lawbringer should avoid doing, or, might be common knowledge for you, but others might not know or be aware?
Well, first of all, in order to play Lawbringer, I would say play him in 4v4 and don't bother playing him in duels and whatnot, because he's very lackluster in duels and you're just not going to have a lot of fun playing him. And if you do play 4v4, it would be very, very helpful if you played with like at least one friend, because here's the thing about Lawbringer, right?
Yeah.
He relies on his teammates a lot. So if you're going to have bad teammates, you're not going to be playing well as Lawbringer. Meanwhile, one friend is all you're going to need to help you improve your gameplay by a large amount.
And why is that?
Basically, things become very easy once you have a teammate that knows how a Lawbringer plays out, and he will let you do what you do best as a Lawbringer, which is gank people with impales and long arms on wall splats. And if you have a friend that doesn't interrupt your punishes a lot of the time, a friend that doesn't knock you out of everything, a friend that guard breaks for your impale, which is something that's commonly used. If you're not going to have any of that, then life is going to be a lot harder for you as a Lawbringer player. As I've mentioned before, you're kind of looking for opportunities in 4v4, you're not really actively participating in fights.
Sure. So a friend who's queuing but you in fours will be able to allow you to take advantage of the opportunities you get yourself, and also can open up some for you, like you said, with that guard break to confirm the impale, and then hopefully combine with your punish too. What do you think is the best way to improve in For Honor, Vinx?
Well, I'm gonna use mine example of how I got into tournaments, because at release, I didn't really play in a lot of tournaments. I was interested in them and I was watching them, but I was never, like, it never occurred to me that, hey, maybe I could play in them. I was more of a viewer than a player. And then at one point, there was this one tournament for 1v1, and I thought to myself, hey, why not try? Like, it doesn't cost me anything. And I didn't do horribly. I didn't go out round one. I didn't win either, but I wasn't expecting to.
Sure.
And after that, the amount of support that I had from competitive people telling me that I should definitely get into it, that I'm a decent player, and that they can definitely see the potential.
Sure.
I was like, why not try? And so I started playing a lot of those competitive guys, and I try to improve by just playing them over and over and over again and learning from the mistakes that I make and talking to them like, what can I do better? What am I doing wrong? And all that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the best way to improve in For Honor is finding somebody that's better than you and somebody who can help you improve because he can point out the mistakes that you're making and then just playing them until you can beat them.
I mean, I think Scorebrand actually said the same thing when it came to, we were discussing duels. He said, you know, if you lose a duel, don't leave it. You know, rematch it until you understand why you lost. Or
Yeah,
if you
exactly.
understand why you lost, then you're willing to, you know, try to counter the mistake or work around it. You know, keep going until you try to master it, or at least learn how to do it. Maybe you can master it later.
There's one thing that needs to be said about improving is
Yeah.
that if you're playing against people who are worse than you or on the same skill level than you, you're not going to learn a great deal. Therefore, you won't really improve as much as you would if you played like a good player.
Sure. I mean, like, I can even say from my own experience, Vinx, you know, playing against yourself and the others in the competitive community who are at a really high level. I've improved more personally in 2 months than I did in the previous 6. Where I was kind of just solo queuing MM and just you know, not really thinking about it, just having a good old time, which is fine as well if you're not interested in getting into the competitive things. But even if you're not interested in competitive things, guys, I would recommend improving your game, learning from the competitive guys, because you do enjoy the game more because there's more to think about, and you know, you kind of appreciate plays and more as well, because you'll appreciate spacing more and things like that. You'll notice things in games that you didn't before. When it comes to Lawbringer, do you, because I know, Vinx, for a fact, and from speaking to you before and stuff, that you have a vast amount of knowledge on the game. Do you have any suggestions for Lawbringer rework or changes? Do you have any ideas or anything like
I
when it comes down to that?
I actually have a doc about
Oh
the
yeah,
Lawbringer rework. I'm not going to like talk about every single change
sure. We,
possible
we
that I've
don't
made
have
in that
time
doc.
today, but yeah,
But basically what I think, like when I think of the Lawbringer, I think of this giant ass dude with a, you know, with a poleaxe
mm-hmm,
and full plate armor,
mm-hmm.
and then I'm thinking to myself, he needs some form of hyper armor implemented into his kit, because
Sure.
the way it is now doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. What I think should happen with him is he should get some neutral pressure, because his neutral pressure right now is non-existent.
Mm-hmm,
He does not need to have the best neutral pressure in the entire game, because he'd make up for it with his ability to flow
mm-hmm.
and his ability to trade. I think improving his flow, giving him some guaranteed damage and neutral pressure, on top of better dodge recovery and faster light attacks, as his light attacks are 600 and all that,
Yeah.
would make him a much better character. But another thing, and I think this needs to be said,
Yeah.
is that block shove, the way it currently is right now,
Yeah.
should not exist in this state of the game, because it's a mechanic that doesn't really fit. It discourages you for attacking, and it just creates this boring playstyle where you just stand there and block shove continuously. I think block shove should be either reworked or entirely removed, and I'd
Mm-hmm.
prefer the latter, while giving him other options to compensate for loss of it.
Sure. I mean, that doesn't sound unreasonable to me whatsoever. I think everyone's aware that, you know, Lawbringer's in need of a rework, and his playstyle is entirely too reliant on one-dimensional, as you said, when he's locked on to someone.
Exactly.
And then the drastic change in playstyle when he's not locked on. Then, funny. It's sorry. I was just thinking it's funny to imagine Lawbringer running around unlocked when he should be a very imposing character locked on.
Exactly.
How do you see the current state of the game? How do you feel about it, and how far it's come?
Oh, it's improved a ton, I think. Looking back at it, like half a year ago, for example, you used to have like one digit amount of teams in 4v4. So you had like 4 to 6 teams in 4v4 tournaments. Now it can go up to 16, which is a very large improvement, so to speak. Same goes for 2v2. Like, there is this Stressed Mayhem tournament, right? And every single time it's held, you have 32 teams, which is 64 players, and that's really not that bad of a number.
No,
Obviously,
not at
the
all.
competitive scene isn't as big as in, say, CSGO or Dota, but it's not that small either anymore.
No, like it's definitely seen some growth spurts recently.
Exactly.
I think and I think that's down to the changes the developers made, which altered the meta and added some variety into it, allowing more players who didn't play, let's say, previous heroes, because the meta was more narrow, the number of heroes you could play, and now you're seeing people playing Zerkers involved. You know, people. Conk wasn't in fours, and you see all the Conquerors getting involved in the fours games now. So I think opening up the meta to a large number of heroes encourages a larger number of players enter into the competitive scene.
Variety to it as well,
Which is always great. You know, variety of playstyle, teams, and comps making you have to think about, okay, how do we play this type of team? Okay, this team has a Berserker instead of this. How should we handle the Berserker? It's much healthier than how it was before Nobu, Shaman, PK, and Lawbringer, I think was.
Yes,
at one point, the comp.
Yes, that was the comp, and you literally saw next to no variety to it. The meta was really stale, and seeing any pick apart from those four was quite a surprise.
Yeah, I remember watching those games. Moving on from that, we've spoken a little bit about it already, but I've here, how is the competitive scene right now in your opinion? I'm gonna change that to how do you feel about the future of the competitive scene?
I think the teams in general are overall getting a lot better because they have the desire to improve and get better. Therefore, you have a lot of teams that weren't that great before that have improved so much over the past couple of months that they can rival the top teams right now. And I think this trend is continue to gradually improve. More teams are going to get better and better, and there will be way more competition than there is right now. As every team is going to improve, every team will be a challenge, and every team will be will have a chance to win a tournament, you know?
Sure, I'm like, from a personal, like, I watch a lot of these, as you know, same as yourself. From a personal standpoint, as a viewer, I'm interested to see how that affects the current top teams like Scores team, UDA, and the likes. And, you know, will they be pushed to improve a lot more if they want to stay top? You know, I think that's a really interesting scenario for the future of the competitive scene for the current top boys.
My opinion on top teams is that they will definitely have to improve themselves, because staying at a top level, it can work. You're not going to be a bad team if you stay on the level you are, but you're not going to outclass the teams that are going to catch up to you and improve, because they have the incentive to do that if they want to be the best. And so in order for you to be the absolute best and to stay on top, you constantly have to be improving, sorry.
That's one of the things I'm looking forward to. I couldn't have summed it up better. That's pretty much it. How would you rate the developers' response to the rocky start and where we are now, Vinx? Are you happy with the job they've done?
Well, if I look at Season 1 and Season 6, I see two entirely different games, pretty much. there is still things that I think they could improve and will improve in the future, seeing what they've done up until now. But
Mhm.
I'm overall very happy with what they've done with the game. They stuck with it, they kept working on it despite having a rocky start, which didn't really help them all that much. And I think they'll continue to make the game better and better.
I mean, there's definitely very strong, clear statements of commitment, especially with this E3 one, which is being hyped up quite a lot. I'm very excited for it.
So am I.
How are you feeling about the future of the game in general? Now, away from the future of the competitive scene, the future of the game, and away from the developers, they're committed. But do you think people are gonna come back? Do you think we can? Do you think a big E3 show, for example, that goes down well, will give the game a burst? Do you think a spectator mode could widen the audience again? How do you feel about players in the future playing this game? Do you think we're gonna get an influx, or how do you think that will play out?
I think going forward, the game is definitely going to see a growth of a player base sooner or later. Both new players and players that are coming back. Because, like I've said before, the game's changed so much since launch that people who quit on launch are basically new players.
For
Because there's
sure.
so many things that have changed that they were used to back then that don't really work anymore, where they're basically gonna have to relearn the game. As for what can help to make the game grow more and more, I think having a very good training mode would help with that. I think the current one could use some tweaks here and
Mm-hmm.
there. And I think spectator mode for tournaments would help the viewer base of the game quite a lot, as people would have an opportunity to see top level players play in tournaments and pick up the little things that they do and go from there. Because watching the games is one of the better ways of learning. It's obviously not as good as playing the game, but it helps quite a lot.
I mean, the angle and view and information and being the convenience of spectator mode definitely helps with the viewing experience. So it would definitely be more entertaining than being confined to behind the player point of view for an entire game. You can see
Exactly.
what other teammates are doing and swap between and all this jazz. Um, I mean, it is the biggest fighting game by a long
I'd say
shot.
so.
By a long shot, For Honor is the largest fighting game at the moment.
Exactly. The
So
amount of players isn't even comparable between For Honor and a proper fighting game
between
like 10v7, for instance.
traditional fighting games, yeah, I mean
Exactly.
there's a huge leap in player numbers when you compare them, which still always blows my mind. Every time I fucking every time I mention that, oh no, I could get demonetized, Vinx. We're gonna have to censor that. All right. I mean, that I think that about sums it up. Vinx, is there any last message you'd like to leave, or something you'd like to say to the community, or if you ever plan on streaming in the future? I know you're not at the moment. Is there anything you'd like to leave us with?
Um, I do stream at times. I don't really stream a lot,
Mm-hmm.
but I still do stream scrims and tournaments. So if you're interested in that, you can definitely check out my Twitch channel. Um, and as for the future, I think if anybody's having any doubts whether or not to stay in For Honor or not, I think it's worth staying. That's why I'm staying. And I've had a break from For Honor before, and I came back to it because I think the game in itself is really good design-wise and concept-wise, and that there's definitely things to improve on. But I think
Mm-hmm.
the devs are very capable of doing so, and that the game is gonna be successful even more so than it is now in the future.
Well, thanks so much for your time, Vinx, and your knowledge and sharing that. It's much appreciated.
Thank you for having me.
Yo guys, cheers for watching, and as Vinx mentioned, he does have a Twitch where he streams some competitive gameplay. Be sure to go check it out if you want to go see the #1 Lawbringer and overall outstanding player. See you later guys, hope you enjoyed. Have a good one.
that hardcore appeal that you're screaming. Maybe I'm dreaming. This ain't Christopher Williams, still some MC got the feel one. Caps, I got the feel some.